Two guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Reckless speculation.
Reckless speculation.
Happy Reckless Speculation Thursday here on Minnesota Sports with Mackie and Judd. Your home for daily Minnesota sports entertainment, therapy, and speculation on Thursdays especially.
Reckless speculation.
All right, the ground rules are for people that are new, because sometimes people get confused, like, what? You guys are crazy. What?
Never gonna happen, Mackie.
This is a safe space to explore fun hypotheticals. Could be stuff that's rooted in reality too. Could be stuff that's like percolating underneath your feet. But it's a safe space. Okay, we throw out ideas and theories, and we look to try and make our Minnesota sports teams better for the long haul. And so today we're going to do another dive into the latest Karl-Anthony Towns trade fodder. I feel like, I don't know about you guys, maybe I'm just getting hit with like the algorithm. But every time I log into social media, it's like
1,000% you are.
There's just like people workshopping new Karl-Anthony Towns trade ideas. And now you've got the Blazers fan base and I don't know, some of these other fan bases look at Cat a little bit sideways. Like, is he really a guy that you're going to give up the number 3 pick for? But it is funny that the internet basically continues to crowdsource trade ideas involving Karl-Anthony Towns. So I've got a bunch of new iterations for you guys today.
All right, let's hear them.
And I think, well, gosh, where should we go here? It's funny to see like how other fan bases view the value of your players, right? Because if you're a Timberwolves fan, you're like, all right, Karl drives me nuts, but he's a third-team All-NBA guy, and he's a unicorn, and he's one of the best three-point shooters.
And, at this time a year ago, if Jazz fans were workshopping a Gobert trade, though, in their wildest dreams, they could have never workshopped the trade that occurred, right? Like, you never would have thought, I love Gobert. He's been here forever. What could we get back? You would never think, 5 draft picks and a slew of players?
Yeah, that is funny because like all the reasons,
but it happens.
Yeah, well, all the reasons why we sit here and put limitations on a potential Cat trade, like, well, I mean, yeah, he fails in the playoffs, or you could apply a lot of the same stuff to Rudy Gobert and say, well, I mean, he got played off the court a couple times in the playoffs before the Jazz traded him, and doesn't have much of an offensive repertoire. He is one of the best defensive players that we've seen in 20 years, but yeah, he wasn't like some of these supermax players that aren't really the best players. They just. Basically, if you're a top 20 player in the NBA, you become a supermax player in your late 20s, and you get, like Jaylen Brown, for instance. He's a really good player. Not a great dribbler, probably not the best guy on a championship team, but because he's one of the 15 to 18 best players in the league, he's about to get a 5-year, $296 million contract from the Celtics?
Yep. So
I think my biggest question about Karl and Gobert, and then anyone that you would trade for, like in that supermax level, like a Jaylen Brown, are they worth handcuffing your cap situation by keeping them on your team or by trading for them? So, anyways, this first one's from Yahoo Sports.
Reckless speculation.
And this is an example of other fan bases don't perceive your players value-wise the same way that you do, right? So I'm just going to read this from Yahoo. Most likely for Brooklyn to put itself, so Brooklyn Nets, for Brooklyn to put itself in the contender conversation, they will need to make a big splash with the trade or hitting on draft picks. According to Vincent Frank of Sportsnot.com. So Sportsnot just throws out crazy trade ideas. Safe space.
God bless them.
The Nets could make that splash by trading a highly coveted player within the Timberwolves organization, Karl-Anthony Towns. Okay. Here's the trade. The Timberwolves would receive Mikal Bridges and Joe Harris. So Bridges, 27 years old, exceptional wing player, plays defense, great three-point shooter, a little undersized at 6'6" if you want to play him at the 3, but as a shooting guard, where I think Brooklyn had him in the second half of the season. Now he's a bigger shooting guard at 6'6", and he scored like 26 points a game. he's just a really good player at 27 years old. And his contract is one of the most team-friendly in basketball. $23 million a year for the next 3 years average, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Joe Harris, more of a salary filler. He's only under contract for 1 more year, but he's 32. But he's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA.
Yes, he is.
So you'd be getting a sniper shooter for a year. Maybe you extend him, but he doesn't quite fit the Anthony Edwards age curve, but he's a salary filler.
Yep.
So you get these two guys, Bridges as the main guy, Harris as the salary filler, but absolutely a good rotation player. And the Nets would get Karl-Anthony Towns, 2 second-round picks, and Jaden McDaniels.
Whoa, what? So what else is going to come to the Wolves?
Nothing.
Speculation.
I mean, Mikal Bridges, you could argue, is the best player in this trade. You could argue.
Okay.
I think Towns has put up bigger numbers for longer, but if you surveyed the league and said you can only have one of these guys, Karl or Mikal Bridges, a lot of people would say Mikal Bridges.
But you're going to give up 2 second-round picks, which and Jaden McDaniels.
Also, Bridges' contract is part of it too, in that you would. So if you're the Timberwolves and you view Karl-Anthony Towns as kind of an albatross contract for the next 5 or 6 years, because now all of a sudden he's going from $36 million to 50 up to $60 million, right?
Sure.
You could just like get rid of that and have Mikal Bridges for half of that for 3 years, and then you would clear out. You'd be part of this is avoiding the luxury tax penalty. Going forward too.
That trade reeks of desperation, and Jaden McDaniels is not being traded, so I hate that one.
I don't think Jaden's being traded either, but I also think Tim Connolly is open to discussions if it makes the team better. But I agree with you. You'd be taking Karl, and you'd be plucking the sidekick for Anthony Edwards, one of the best perimeter defenders. So I wouldn't do this trade either, just to be clear. But it's an interesting look at how other teams and fan bases look at Jaden and say he's a good player, but like he's not what you guys think he is.
I don't hate the idea of clearing out Cat to absorb a much more conducive cap hit in Mikal Bridges, but giving up Jaden with that, I'm out. The second round picks are whatever. Take the second round picks. Don't care about those. But
sorry, Dustin.
I can't do but I don't think I can pair out Jaden McDaniels with it either.
So if I'm Conley though, and I think we've discussed this previously in the reckless speculation lifestyle that we lead when it comes to this potential trade. If I'm Conley, I need to feel like I am winning this trade. So like if I'm going to trade Cat, I'm not doing it because I'm desperate. I'm not doing it even if I am a little bit desperate. I need to win this trade. So like I'm not throwing in fillers and blah, blah, blah. I am trading you what I hope you assume is a great player. We know he's a great talent. So I need to feel at least a semblance of what the Jazz must have felt on the day that they traded Gobert here, which is, okay, I did really well.
Yeah, I agree. I love Mikal Bridges. But then again, too, if you acquire Mikal Bridges, I don't know if the starting lineup can be, let's say, Conley or point guard, future point guard, Ant at the 2, because Ant's not a point guard, Ant's a 2. Right. Mikal Bridges is like a 2-3. And Jaden McDaniels is a really skinny 6'9" guy who you're probably not playing at the 4 very often going forward. So like it would be a weird deal where I don't know that those guys would all fit in the same starting lineup together. Would McDaniels come off the bench and get his 30 minutes that way? So let's keep going here. Mm-hmm. Actually, before I keep going, you brought up the word desperation. There is a little bit of organizational desperation that's 12, 15 months on the horizon here. And Canis Hoopus did a great job this week in an article laying out what lies ahead now that the new CBA is in play here. The NBA is trying to make it a lot harder to build like 3-headed monster dynasties, essentially. They want to make it so that you got your 2 guys, and then you can build out your roster beyond that. And severe penalties loom for teams that push up against the second apron above the luxury tax. I won't get into all the weeds here, but basically, like, if the Wolves stand pat and if they don't trade one of their big contract guys in the next year, or if they don't get rid of basically all of their semi-highly paid role players and replace them with veteran minimum guys or like draft picks, they're going to run into some major penalties. You're going to run into, not being able to use a mid-level exception. You're going to run into not being able to trade future draft picks that are more than 5 years out. Like there's just like restrictions that the NBA puts on teams that get too far into luxury tax. So to avoid going into that second apron of the luxury tax in a year from now, they have to trade either Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, or get rid of like all other players who make money and fill the roster with nothing. So you could wait a year and deal with it. But if you get 12 months down the road, every team in the NBA that you would be talking to knows that you're desperate at that point to get under the second apron of the luxury tax. So I'm just saying, like, Tim Connolly's, despite what some Wolves fans think, is not an idiot. He knows this is looming in a year from now, which means now would be the best time with the most leverage to trade a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns. So
Absolutely.
That's even more reason not to settle, by the way, on a trade like the Brooklyn one.
Right. Exactly. You are still, and here's the thing with Cat too. So Cat here, as far as the playoffs, certainly has not worked out. But if Cat went to the right team, he could probably be a very effective playoff player in the right environment, right? So like if I trade him and you throw back at me, well, look at his playoff failures. He's not as good as people think, blah, blah. And you know what? There's some validity to that. But what I'm going to say is if you are the right team for him, and he does not have to be, as Phil said so many years ago, the man, and he is a complimentary player because he'd be damn good there. And he didn't have the pressure of feeling that it was his team. I think you'd be trading a very valuable asset. Of course, it would have to be to the right team.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's get to another team. Maybe he's the right fit for this next team.
Reckless speculation.
A team that just made a big coaching change, looking to shuffle things up, maybe spark something after winning a championship a few years ago. And this is from Sports Not again, just shoveling fun ideas into our timelines here. Yeah. So the Timberwolves would get from Toronto Pascal Siakam and the number 13 overall pick in this year's draft. Now I get it, like you can't technically trade Cat for a week or two after the draft, but in that case, Toronto would make the pick for you, and then it happens in the NBA. So the Wolves would get Pascal Siakam and the number 13 overall pick, and Toronto would get Karl-Anthony Towns. They would get 5 years of Karl-Anthony Towns. So this is the rest of the write-up, and then I'll explain more here. For the Timberwolves, this would clear the way for Rudy Gobert to be the main big featured big man. It wouldn't be a Twin Tower situation. They would add a big-time talent in Siakam who could take on some of the scoring load left by Towns. Adding in the number 13 pick would give Minnesota a chance to add another young talent to the roster moving forward. So a couple things on this. Siakam, he would play power forward. He's a 6'9", very versatile power forward who can kind of double as a wing in some ways, the way that he plays. 24 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists last season, and he's led the NBA in minutes per game the last 2 years too. He's just a guy that can just go and be out there for like 37, 38 minutes. The problem is you'd actually be getting older here because he's 29 years old and he only has 1 year left on his contract. So you'd be shifting further, because one of the appealing reasons to maybe trade Cat for some assets is if those assets more closely align with the Anthony Edwards age timeline. Mm-hmm. Anthony Edwards is 21, going to be 22. Jaden McDaniels aligns. Naz Reid aligns, right? If you were to get the number 3 pick from the Blazers, whoever you would draft there is 19 years old and aligns more closely than maybe a 27 or a 29-year-old.
Yep.
But Siakam is also really good and would probably fit very well in what the rest of the lineup looks like. But you'd be trading 5 years of Cat for 1 year of Pascal Siakam and the 13th overall pick. He would be an absolute flight risk to go sign somewhere else in free agency.
That's a no for me, dog.
This is a yes for me, dog. I honestly love this idea.
I love Siakam. Siakam for sure. Yeah.
I like Siakam a lot. I like getting the 13th overall draft pick and having a potential another complimentary piece there that's going to be under a rookie scale contract for 4 years. Now, here's the only question I have, because I'm not as into the salary cap situation. You have Siakam, and what's his salary? going into that final year?
Is almost exactly the same as Cats.
As Cats?
37 million, Cats 36 million.
So let's say Siakam then walks. How does it work with you? You just have 37 million to play with in your set. You lose that slot, right?
Because this is where the NBA gets really complicated. Once you're over the salary cap, which the Wolves would still be, let's say you're, and I don't have it in front of me. Let's say you're like $19 million over the salary cap and a $35 million player comes off your books. You would not get 35 million to play with necessarily. You would get like the difference as you go under the cap. So they would lose that salary cap slot, which is what they were worried about with D'Lo. If D'Lo's 30 came off the books, they weren't like under the cap, so they would just like lose that. That's why having Conley at 20 or 25 for another year or two extends it. But at a certain point, you're taking all these contracts into luxury taxville. And do A-Rod and Laurie want to pay a $40 million luxury tax bill and get hit with like these roster constraining stipulations? So at some point, you're probably going to have to just say goodbye to a chunk of money or one of these max salary spots anyways.
I'm still in on this. I think I'm in on this. I want Siakam, who's a veteran who can play and is very just a Swiss Army knife, and I want the 13th overall kid that I can build around for 4 years as a complimentary piece. I'm in on this trade. I like
another thing you could do real quick is you could extend Siakam, but he's going to be 30 years old then in a year from now, and you could trade Gobert in a year if you thought that Siakam was a better fit for this puzzle than Karl-Anthony Towns, and you didn't want to deal with paying Towns $50 million in a couple of years.
Get me at the very least a top 10 pick.
Well, 13th isn't. You're splitting hairs there a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah, but I don't want an aging play. The problem is, I think, Phil, that you are right in they're going to want to get players that fit into the timeline because they're always fighting this fight against the timeline. And if Ant is truly the guy, then I want, and he should be, I want to pick a high draft pick that I can plug in. I want players I can plug in, not be concerned about is player X, as good as he might be, going to turn around and walk and or just start to age out.
And for the record here, I'm kind of playing like all sides here in this discussion. I think I don't know that I would run to the table to complete this trade either. There's some interesting reasons to consider this, but I generally, if you have an asset like Towns, and even with his flaws, he is an asset.
Yes.
Rudy Gobert with his flaws was an asset, and you saw what the Jazz got for. So if you have an asset like this and you're going to make a trade, you should be very intentional about the things that you get back and them aligning with Anthony Edwards for the long haul, I think, right?
Yes.
And that brings us to the next couple of trade ideas presented by our friends at Livia, helping SKOR North listeners lose a lot of weight over the past couple of years. Change your life.
Speaking of ideas, speaking of programs that work, I'm going to tell you right now, I dropped now a couple of years back, actually, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of when I started on this program, dropped 40 pounds. The most important thing is my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. They're not only going to help you drop the weight, they're going to help you maintain the weight loss. And that's the most important thing. And right now, have I got a deal for you, and it ends tomorrow. So you want to contact them ASAP. The 1-week special offer that's on now, it's called Livia's Premier All Access Offer, 50% off plus a free gift. 50% off the program plus a free gift. You could lose up to, get this, 15 pounds or more by the 4th of July. Imagine in July, down 15 pounds, feeling great, clothes fit. It's outstanding. And then you're going to maintain that weight loss. Again, the offer ends Friday, 855-GO-LIVIA, livia.com. livea.com is your ticket to summer weight loss and success that's going to continue into the fall.
Also, it's riding season here, so whatever you ride, a Harley, an Indian, metric cruiser, sport bike, if you like to get out, all you Ragnars out there, if you like to get out and enjoy the summer months on the road, Dennis Kirk has you covered so you can ride more and weight less. Over 180,000 parts and accessories in stock, clothing and helmets as well. Shipping is free for orders over $89. If you order by 8 p.m., they ship the same day. Everything you need for your ride at DennisKirk.com.
Reckless speculation.
All right. From our friends at Canis Hoopus.
Good
an
stuff.
Excellent Timberwolves
Yes.
thought leader platform. Dude, the Timberwolves blog and podcast sphere is so good.
It's very good.
It's so
They don't
good.
deserve it.
Who
Like, they're
doesn't?
great.
The-
The Wolves don't deserve the type of coverage
The
that they
people.
get. The Wolves don't deserve, like, it's really, really highbrow. Like, you would think that the Wolves are good.
dude, it's amazing. Like
The
it
bloggers
is,
do a great job. For
and
that.
it just spins out more and more talented people over the
Yes.
years. And so my guy Kyle Tigey, and by the way, Craig Kilborn, going to make another appearance
Kilby.
on Flagrant House today. Lord Kilby,
Oh boy,
my
That's
my
nice.
brunch friend Craig Kilborn is going to
Yep.
come on and
Named up.
speculate.
Name drop.
Is it a name drop if I'm promoting that he's
Yeah,
going
well-
to be on the podcast?
No, brunch friend is though.
A little bit of a look at me, Louie kind of moment there, if you will, there, Phil.
He's
but
my
that's
brunch
okay.
friend.
Yeah.
No,
it's
but
okay.
brunch friend, it's a definite brag.
Mhm.
The fact
I think
going
he's
to be
probably
on the
bragging
podcast is
bragging
not
to his friends that
Yeah.
he got to go get brunch with Phil Mackey. No,
I'm
Probably
sure some folks at different stations in this town are a little bit jealous of that one.
oh, that's fine. Stations, such an old word. Okay, Canis Hoopus.
It's the radio.
Canis Hoopus. Here's a 3-team trade. Actually, no, let's start with this one. This is a more simple one. All right, so this would be just a Timberwolves Blazers trade. The Blazers would get Karl-Anthony Towns to pair up with Damian Lillard. The Wolves would get Anthony Simons, of a combo guard who scores 20-some points a game. He's young, like 23 years old. Defense, very optional, but an electric scorer.
Could be a problem. Okay.
Nasir Little, who's more of just a salary match guy, just kind of a rotational wing player. And the number 3 overall pick.
Yep.
Just a very simple, clean one-for-one trade with instead of a 4-team trade.
Now we're cooking.
Okay.
Now we're cooking with gas. This is what I want. Because the number 3 pick is going to be an immediate contributor. It's going to fit in with Ant perfectly timeline wise. And so, yes, this is my idea of what would be a very fair trade.
Yeah, because you might say, well, wait a
Feel good
second.
about this.
Carl's only like 5 years older than Ant. The guy you drafted would be 4 years younger. So, right. But as Ant emerges into his prime, you'd
Correct.
like the 19-year-old to become 23, 24, as opposed to the 27-year-old becoming 32 in a perfect world.
Mhm.
And Scoot Henderson, there's some flaws there. Like, he's not the greatest shooter, but there's a lot to like. Energizer Bunny, think kind of a Russell Westbrook type, but maybe with a little bit more self-awareness as a basketball player. That's kind of how he projects. So I'm very interested in this type of a trade. But let's throw it to our Portland Trailblazers insider here, Declan Goff.
Well, this is pretty similar to what you proposed, right? Like 3-4
Oh,
weeks, like a month ago. I mean, they might have just ripped it off. They might have just
We
listened
did
to
we
Maggie
did
and Chuck.
birth this whole idea a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago. Yeah.
It's just more of trying to figure out if Cat and Dame fit together and if the Blazers want that pair. I think I don't know if the Blazers want just Cat and Dame, and that all of a sudden makes them the team to beat in the West. So
It doesn't. That's the thing. Because I've heard that pushback a lot of like, well, the Blazers aren't going to win the title with Lillard and Cat. I don't care what if,
Yeah,
if
well,
they're
yes, of course.
if they're desperately willing to make a trade to get a secondary player.
Right.
Who are we to judge? The Timberwolves made a trade for Gobert, and the league said, well, they're not a contender by making that trade. That's okay. It's the Wolves were still desperate enough to make the trade at the time, right?
right.
Well, and there has to be a decent portion of teams that privately think that the Wolves are such buffoons that they've screwed up Cat and that they can fix him. Like, that has to be a theory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Cat is as like universally loved outside. I think the same things that we have feared about Cat or that we criticize Cat for, I think those are now percolating more outside of Minnesota too. Maybe not at the level that, angsty Wolves fans really want him out, but I think the writing on the wall is people kind of now know who Cat is. Where 4 years ago when they were doing, drafts of what players would you start a franchise with, and Cat was one of the first few guys you could start a franchise with. He has fallen off from that tier one.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly in like the 30 to 20 range of the best NBA players.
But there's got to be like a savior sort of feeling. If you look at the track record of this organization since KG left, how many players didn't live up to what the expectations were and then went somewhere else in a different role and thrived and or won a ring, right? Kevin Love, Andrew Wiggins, it's.
And teams don't think like fans. So teams are are haughty enough to say, oh, we can fix him. Now, fans might say exactly what Declan said, which is I'm sort of out on Cat, but I could see at least a handful of teams saying, if we got that guy, those buffoons in Minnesota, they've screwed him up, we'll fix him. And that's all you need them to think.
Yeah. I got one more for you here from Canis Hoopus. So this is, God dang it, man.
Reckless speculation.
It's a little bit similar for the Timberwolves, but it's a 3-team trade. And here's what it looks like. So the Timberwolves, well, I'll do them last. The Celtics would get Karl-Anthony Towns, Taurean Prince. Dude, this is the same stuff that we send out Towns and Prince, right?
Wow.
Karl-Anthony Towns. I'm not accusing them of anything.
The
It's just smart
flying.
people come to the same
The accusations
conclusions.
are flying.
Not-
Make no
it's
mistake about it. I'd like to apologize to our friends.
The Celtics would get Cat and Taurean Prince from the Timberwolves.
Okay.
And they would get a 2026 first-round pick from the Blazers. So a future first-round pick from the Blazers. The Blazers would get Al Horford and Jaylen Brown from the Celtics. So the swap there with the Blazers and Celtics would basically be coming in for the Celtics would be Towns and Prince. Going out would be Jaylen Brown and Al Horford. So you'd be getting Horford's kind of aging out. He's a really good player, but he's getting old. And you would say goodbye to him, replace him with Towns, and then Jaylen Brown with Taurean Prince as a role player. And then the Timberwolves, for them sending out Towns and Prince to the Celtics, would get Anthony Simons, the 3rd overall pick, and then 2 salary fillers in Nasir Little. And then you'd get Luke Cornett he's a big man from the Celtics that's just a guy, just to fill out a couple extra $1 million. So you'd be sending out Prince with Towns, but you'd be getting pretty much the same thing with a couple salary fillers, Anthony Simons and the number 3 overall pick.
I'd do this.
And it kind of
I would do it.
It makes sense for the Blazers in that, okay, again, we could debate whether they're actually a championship contender or not. That's the point is they want to get better desperately in their last year or two with Damian Lillard, right? That's the motivation. So the Blazers would then have Damian Lillard, Jaylen Brown as a backcourt, Al Horford, and whatever he has left in the tank. I would assume then that they would bring back Jeremy Grant, who averaged 20.5 points, 5 rebounds, a couple assists last year, and then whatever else you can fill the roster out with. I mean, that's a pretty good group of players to push forward with. And Shaedon Sharpe, too, would probably elevate and play 25, 30 minutes. So interesting. Celtics get a shakeup. Blazers get actual adults around Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Wolves get Anthony Simons and the number 3 overall pick.
Unfortunately, I don't think that teams like the Wolves and Blazers necessarily in reality are making these deals to be championship teams like immediately. I think they just want to be competitive, right? And make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think the conversation is that trade going to land Declan's team, the Trailblazers, an LOB? I think the conversation is, does it get them in the tournament? Does it make them competitive?
Yeah,
and
they
so
need
I
to
don't
take
think
a step,
we're going
right?
to. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think we're going to. Well, Dame's going to win a championship. I think we're going to. Dame is going to at least have a chance, probably to end his career on a respectable franchise again.
Yep. So it sounds like this show is kind of if the opportunity presented itself in some form to send out Cat and bring in the number 3 overall pick and another piece like an Anthony Simons, that this show is highly interested in that discussion.
Oh, hell yeah. I told you, I'm out on Cat. I've seen enough. It's an attitude that I don't like.
Yeah.
It's woe is me on the court I don't like. It's a lack of understanding of situations I don't like. So yeah, I'm done. I like what you said, Phil, about the explanation of why it behooves them to trade him now. Now, I am not going to give him away. I'm not going to, if I'm Conley, I'm not going to hang up the phone and be like, oh, okay, we dumped him at least. I want to hang up the phone and feel like I at least might have a chance to win said trade, if not outright won the trade. But I am fully on board. Even if he goes elsewhere on a different team and is successful, I am fully on board with trading Cat.
Reckless speculation.
I think Boston, the market would be a problem for him. Portland would be great.
That'd be
He
fine.
could go settle into the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of pressure in Boston. That's a good point.
Saw a video from him on his Instagram today, cat that is, of like doing deep sea dive like training regimen, and he was like having a basketball, he was like throwing it to Jordan Woods and doing low impact training or something. I don't know.
He's not.
I'm had enough.
Maybe, but like that's called a vacation with your girlfriend,
which is cool. But yeah,
that's fine. You can
Yeah.
vacation with your girlfriend, but don't frame it like it's, oh, we're doing deep sea basketball training. It's like,
My
no, you're
honeymoon-
vacationing with your girlfriend and posting on Instagram.
Yeah, throw me
That's
that
fine.
basketball, Jordan.
Yeah. My honeymoon, that's what I'm gonna call it. I'm resetting my podcast space to deliver more takes when I'm on a Bora Bora or wherever I'm gonna go in a year and a half or something. That'll be what I'm doing.
Yes, it's us time together as we
Mm-hmm.
get better professionally too. So all right, yeah, let us know if you guys have ideas for cat trades. We can make this. I mean, there's probably a month left of this because then the actual rubber hits the road with the draft at the end of June and then the beginning of July. And just keep in mind, this isn't like you guys desperately want to get rid of Cat. No, this is a roster puzzle that needs to be solved in the next 12 to 15 months. And it's going to be hard to get a lot for Rudy Gobert at this point after what happened last year. So this is how would you work your way out of this luxury tax conundrum, roster shackling conundrum that lies ahead in 12 to 15 months? Hit us up, Twitter, YouTube comment section. We'd love to hear from you guys. Feedback tab on the SKOR North app. But that's a wrap on Reckless Speculation Thursday.
Reckless speculation.
See you guys.